Welcome back to This Explainer. In part 1, we saw how leverage takes a little 10% market bump and turns it into a massive 100% return on your money. But what if the market just sits there? What if it's completely flat? Well, today we're looking at how professionals totally bypass that waiting game. We're going to see how you can actually manufacture your own wealth, and then, here's the crazy part, pull it out in cold hard cash without paying a single cent in tax. Let's get into it.
So think about this. What if your assets' growth had absolutely nothing to do with stock tickers or unpredictable economic news? What if you could personally force a property's value to go up, completely on your own schedule? This is a concept called forced appreciation, and honestly, it is the single biggest advantage property has over pretty much every other mainstream investment out there. Section 1, you control the value, and making that proactive shift.
When you put your money into traditional assets, you're basically being passive. Think of a stock market investor like an art collector, right? They buy a painting, hang it on the wall, and just sit back hoping the external market eventually decides it's worth more. I mean, you can't exactly paint a stock certificate to boost its value. But a property investor, that's entirely different. You have to make a proactive shift. You are the sculptor. You take a raw block of material and you actively create value with your own hands, your skills, your vision. You're not just crossing your fingers, you're pulling the levers. You decide when value gets created.
Let's look at exactly what this means in the real world. The general public is just obsessed with instant gratification. Most buyers want a place they can just drop their bags in right now. They're terrified of a house that needs even a tiny bit of cosmetic work. So a place with some ugly, peeling gray paint, it just sits there unloved and discounted. But an amateur's fear is your absolute golden opportunity. You scoop up that property, spend, say, $400 on some fresh, bright paint, and boom, the next bank appraisal can literally show a $20,000 jump in value. That is a 5,000% return on your $400. You are literally painting equity onto the walls.
Moving on to Section 2, manufacturing equity on demand and the actual math of forced appreciation.
Now, you might be wondering, how do we turn something as simple as painting a wall or fixing a squeaky cabinet into undeniable bank-certified equity? Well, the magic formula here is the capitalization rate, or cap rate. This is the absolute engine of forced appreciation. The rule is simple. A property's value equals your net annual rental income divided by the local cap rate. Basically, buyers and banks value a building based on a multiple of the rent it brings in. So, mathematically, any strategic little improvement you make that bumps up the rent instantly forces the entire building's appraised value to rise. It's like a law of gravity in the real estate market. Let's break this down step by step with a super simple example. Say your property doesn't have covered parking. Step 1, you spend $1,000 to build a basic carport. Step 2, tenants love covered parking, right? So they happily pay an extra $20 a week, which comes out to roughly $1,000 more a year in rent. Step 3, apply the cap rate formula. If the local cap rate is 10%, you divide that $1,000 of new rent by 10%, and guess what? The property's overall value just jumped by $10,000. You spent $1,000 and instantly manufactured $10,000 in permanent equity. It's just brilliant. And here is where the math just gets mind-bending. Say you take that new appraisal straight to the bank and borrow 70% against that new $10,000 in value. The bank hands you $7,000. You pay your builder the $1,000 for the carport, and you pocket the remaining $6,000. Your net capital spent on this project? Literally zero. Actually, scratch that. You essentially got paid $6,000 to do it. Because you pulled out more cash than you put in, your cash-on-cash return is effectively infinite. Oh, and you still get that extra rental income every single year. Section 3, the refinancing loophole in extracting the wealth. Okay, so you just learned how to create equity out of thin air. But how do you actually get that cash into your hands without giving up the property? Most people just assume that to lock in a profit, you gotta sell. But selling? That is an amateur move. The second you sell, you get hit with massive capital gains taxes, which can wipe out up to 45% of your profit, depending on where you live. Plus, you shrink your portfolio and you completely kill off that passive income stream. So what do the professionals do? They refinance. You go to the bank, borrow against that newly appraised value, and you keep the asset forever. The absolute genius of this whole loophole is baked right into the tax code. The money you pull out through a bank refinance is legally classified as a loan. And in every major tax jurisdiction on the planet, a loan is not considered income, which means it's a 100% tax-free event. You can literally pocket hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in cash, and you won't owe a single red cent to the government on it.
Section 4. The tax-free wealth cascade and scaling the portfolio.
Let's zoom out and look at the math on a longer timeline. Let's say you buy $1 million property. You put $100K down and the bank covers the other $900K. Years go by and that property doubles in value to $3 million. Remember, we are not selling. Instead, you head back to the bank and refinance at 90% of that new $3 million value. The bank hands you a fresh loan for $2.7 million. Use $900K of that to wipe out your original mortgage. That leaves $1.8 million, which drops directly into your personal bank account. And because it's a loan, that $1.8 million is entirely tax-free. No selling, no missing bricks, just $1.8 million in cold, hard cash.
So what's next? You cascade it. You take that $1.8 million and split it up into 18 separate $100,000 deposits. Using those exact same leverage rules we talked about in part 1, every single one of those $100K deposits lets you control a brand new $1 million property. Bam! You just grabbed $18 million in entirely new assets. Add that to the $3 million property you still hold, and your total portfolio has exploded to $21 million. Think about it. You started with $100,000, you never paid capital gains tax, you still own the whole shebang, and the bank literally funded the entire expansion. This is systematic compounding, just playing by the rules the financial system itself set up.
Section 5. The mental upgrade and thinking like a professional. Now, all this math is absolutely useless if you fall into the exact same mental trap that catches 99% of amateurs. When they hear about crazy concepts like infinite returns on a carport or pulling out millions tax-free, they instantly shut it down. They cross their arms and say, well, that won't work for me. Honestly, that phrase is just a deal killer wearing a mask of realism. Professionals do not think like that. They replace that roadblock with a question. How could I make that work for me? It forces your brain to actually look for solutions. Because the reality is, pretty much every obstacle in real estate has already been solved by someone else. Your job isn't to declare it impossible. Your job is to figure out how to pull it off.
All right, here is a quick interactive moment to test everything we've gone over in this explainer. Knowing the absolutely devastating math of capital gains taxes and seeing the compounding magic of tax-free loans, ask yourself this. When would you ever choose to let go of an asset?
The answer? Almost never. The only time you'd ever sell is if a property is just completely underperforming and you've tried absolutely every trick in the book to fix it. Otherwise, selling for profit is strictly an amateur's game. You started this explainer knowing leverage multiplies your returns. Now, you know the ultimate pro strategy. Manufacture equity on demand with smart improvements. Refinance to get your cash tax-free, and let your portfolio compound forever. So I'm going to leave you with this. Knowing that you can control the value, and knowing you can extract the cash without giving the tax man a dime, what is stopping you from becoming the sculptor of your own financial future?